From the Opelka Studios in Oklahoma City, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. Time for our inbox segments. Email questions come in, our video answers come out. Barry, this week we're going to talk about OSU's offense, Tommy Tuberville, Russell Westbrook, but let's start with Bob Stoops and this question from Jerry. Jerry says, what's going on with Bob Stoops? Is the team so fragile that he can't be honest about how they play? He said a couple times how the fumble by Damian Williams really hurt, and I agree, but he never mentioned Landry Jones' horrible throw in the Knicks series for an interception.
Well, I think Jerry's onto a little bit here, which is I think Bob sort of is in protection mode with Landry. And I think that's just in response to the constant criticism that Landry gets. Now, personally, I think Landry's a big boy, and I think it rolls off his back, and he's been around long enough, he doesn't pay any attention to it. But Bob still gets sort of riled up at the notion of criticism of Landry. Bob Stoops knows better than anybody about Landry Jones' limitations, which are that he's just not an All-American type quarterback. He's not Bradford White or Heupel. But he's a very good quarterback. He's won a ton of games. He's made a bunch of big throws. And yes, he had one bad throw, or maybe two out of ever how many against Baylor. But the truth is, Landry Jones is playing very well at quarterback, and Bob Stoops is just in the mood to protect him.
Yeah, and I think Bob Stoops is a little bit defensive, not only in the Landry critics, but his team's critics. We saw him after the game on Saturday against Baylor say, hey, our defense decided we were going to allow the run game if we could stop Baylor's pass. And then we saw the defensive guys come in, including his brother Mike, say, no way, we're not happy with that. So clearly these two guys might need to talk a little bit before they go in front of the media. Get your stories straight. Yeah, they wouldn't be good criminals. But I think Bob is in a little bit of a protectionism mode, not only with Landry, but his defense. And, that's all right if he wants to be, but, you can see the evidence. 252 rushing yards by Baylor, definitely not good. All right, back to the inbox. This one from Chris. Chris says, I'm about to pull my hair out. Russell Westbrook is killing me. He has more athletic ability than any point guard in the league and still cannot seem to make a single player around him better. That to me is the measure of a quality player. He goes 6 for 19 and 2 assists when he could easily go 6 for 12. And 7 assists. Barry, somebody criticizing Russell Westbrook. Are you going to stand for this?
No, I'm not. I'm going to go all Bob Stoops with Landry Jones. I don't go for this criticism of Russell Westbrook. This email came the day after Westbrook scored 33 points on 11 of 25 shooting, which is not great, but was perfectly acceptable, on a night when everybody else, including Kevin Durant, combined to shoot 33%. This wasn't that Piston game. It wasn't that Russell shot too much. He didn't shoot enough. Here's the deal. His assists are very good. His assists are up this year.
They are.
And Westbrook can just keep, I say what I've been saying. If I'm Sam Presti or I'm Scott Brooks, I have one rule, which is anybody that tries to change Russell Westbrook is going to have a problem with me.
I agree with you. And you know what? The one biggest problem I have isn't shots, isn't assists, it's turnovers. And it's not just Russell and turnovers, it's the whole team and turnovers. That to me is their biggest issue right now. Sure, you'd love to see shooting numbers better, you'd love to see assist numbers higher, but what Russell Westbrook did in that Detroit game saved the day. I mean, let's be honest, he saved the day. And he saved the day a lot for this team. So he and Kevin Durant, Thunder fans need to get through their heads. Those are the two guys that are immovable parts on this team. They're not going anywhere. They're that important. So just be conscious of that, folks, that Russell Westbrook, he's a big-time player. He's going to make mistakes, but he's a big-time player. But turnovers, Barry, they got to cut down the turnovers a little bit. At least give me 3 or 4 less in a game, for crying out loud. That's pretty bad out there.
A little bit like Brett Favre. You're just going to have to learn to live with it.
Okay. All right. Back to the inbox. This one from Ron. Ron says, did you see the video of Tommy Tuberville's tantrum, which, by the way, is the greatest tongue twister I think I've ever had? What happens to Tommy Tuberville?
Well, he got upbraided by the Big 12 Conference. I'm interested to see what Tech eventually does to him, because this is a school that fired the previous coach ostensibly because of treatment of players. It just fired another basketball coach, or forced him out, Billy Gillespie, for mistreatment of players in terms of excessive practices and those things. So Tech doesn't have a lot of ground to stand on to say this is okay. Yeah. But the problem is, Tommy Tuberville has a 30-year history of solid behavior. This is not like him at all. I don't know what got into his head. I didn't like his explanation. That was nonsense. He's just talking out of his head.
Yeah.
But Tuberville's been a solid individual for 30 years. So I think you got to give him the, some leniency here. Some sort of reprimand is fine. I think Tuberville's probably learned his lesson. But the problem at Texas Tech right now is they've set a standard, they've set a policy, and now if they don't, if they don't hold Tuberville to sort of the same thing they held Mike Leach to and Billy Gillespie to, then you've got problems.
Yeah, they need some adult supervision on this one. And right now, we haven't really seen them step forward and say, listen, it's not that excuse that he gave after the game. I'm sorry, I wasn't in Lubbock. I didn't see it live, but I saw it after the fact, and you can't tell me he was trying to get his assistant to get off the field. That to me was the most hollow excuse that I've ever heard. He needed to be suspended for this next game. And I'm not saying that because he's coming to the state of Oklahoma. There needed to be a swift decision made, punishment delivered. Don't fire him. I agree with Barry. I don't think you take one incident and say you're gone. Although I do wonder if you do that in public when you know there are dozens of cameras on you, what are you doing in private when nobody's looking?
Good question.
It's a question worth thinking about if you're in Lubbock. All right, lastly to the inbox, this one from David. David says, OSU's uniforms can best be described as prison uniforms. Oh, okay. That I didn't know, Barry. But the Cowboys do have a potent offense. Are we talking uniforms or are we talking offense here?
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk uniforms. Everybody knows about the offense. I actually sort of like the grays. OSU wore the black helmets, the gray shirts, the gray pants. And the gray shirts had more distinct numbers and lettering.
You could see the numbers.
Last year when they wore the gray, it was hard to read. I actually love the gray. The OSU introduced the gray last year, the dark silver, whatever you want to call it. I liked it. And my favorite uniform was the gray. They wore to A&M, gray helmets, white shirts, gray pants. I thought that was a fabulous look. I liked those on Saturday. I don't think they look like uniforms. In fact, to me, I drive by, every once in a while, I drive by a place of incarceration. A lot of people wearing orange jumpsuits. I don't see a lot of people wearing gray. So I like OSU's uniforms on Saturday, and I have to agree. They do have a potent offense.
Maybe he was talking about the all-orange uniforms that look like the prison uniforms.
Maybe
Although
so.
I liked those too. I thought they were a little bright on TV, but I tell you what, OSU mixing up the uniform. Some people say, hey, pick a uniform, stick with it. But if you don't have a traditional look, if you don't have an OU look, a Penn State look, a Michigan look, a Notre Dame look, although Notre Dame's mixed up theirs, and I don't agree with that. If you don't have sort of a traditional uniform that everybody says you have to stick with, mix it up a lot. Do what Oregon does. Do what Oklahoma State does. It creates interest. It creates excitement. People are curious to see what they're going to come out in. And now they've got all these different new helmets, the orange helmets, the different decals on the side. I think it's fun. It's an added element to every game that OSU plays in. And I don't mind the gray. They're not my favorite, but I don't mind them either. All right, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.